Whether people are in a cutting phase or a building phase, one of the most common questions I've been getting lately is about cheat days. And actually it usually starts with, can I have a cheat meal? Which, I mean, the short answer is you can do whatever you want. You just have to understand what the potential positives and negatives are and what's the best option for you. There really are no hard rules you have to follow with this stuff, and different strategies work for different people. But I also get it. Most people do follow some sort of diet with a name, and most of them do have these hard rules you must follow. And this is just part of the reason why I'm typically not a big fan of these diets. Because whenever you're told you can't have something, you just want it even more. And then whenever you do have it, you just feel bad about it, you feel guilty, and food does not have morality. So all any of this does is set you up with an unhealthy relationship with food. To me, when something is your choice, it makes it much easier to accept what you're doing, whereas if you're told you can't have something, you're much more likely to rebel against it. Anyway, as far as cheat meals goes, personally, I'm not a fan of the term cheat, and I would encourage you to think about how you use terminology as well, because if you think about it, when is cheating ever a good thing? When you cheat, it implies you're doing something wrong. But that's the big problem with looking at foods as good or bad to begin with, because you feel like you can't have them or have to earn them, and then when you do have them, you feel like, well, my diet starts again tomorrow, so I need to get as much as possible in right now before it's off limits again. What often happens from there is you end up feeling disappointed with yourself, wondering why you can never stick to a diet. This sends you down a shame spiral that can last for days or even weeks, if not be the very thing that gets you to give up altogether. Now, this doesn't mean there isn't a place for an untracked meal or even day from time to time. The point is, your terminology does matter, as well as your thought processes. Which is exactly why I do like to look at these things as untracked meals or maybe a free meal. Because even if you are a flexible dieter and you don't ban any certain foods, still, if you're gonna lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit, so there's no way around restricting calories. And unless you wanna be starving all the time, you're gonna wanna base a lot of your diet around nutrient-dense filling foods, meaning there probably won't be a lot of room for the treats you enjoy, especially the longer you do it and the more aggressive you have to be. So yeah, there's certainly a psychological benefit from having these meals from time to time, especially if you know one of these meals is coming soon. It makes it easier to stick to the plan until then, and then if you do have one and that helps you feel satisfied, it'll make it easier to stick to the plan moving forward as well. But even then, going on some sort of free-for-all, especially if we're talking about an entire day and not just one meal, well, that can easily add up to a lot of calories and undo a lot of hard work. So this is where you have to understand the difference between having an untracked meal where maybe you just feel like going out and having a burger and fries and you don't feel like tracking, and this helps you feel satisfied and you just get back on track the next day, versus, well, I know I'm gonna have this burger and fries anyway, so I might as well have the appetizer and then also a dessert, wash it down with 3 or 4 beers, and then I might as well come home and have an entire quart of ice cream too. Occasionally having a meal you want, especially during times like celebrations where you might be going out for an anniversary or birthday or something like that, isn't going to cause any major setback. Constantly binging your face off every time you get off plan is almost an impossible situation to win. You also have to consider what I said at the beginning of this video. You can do whatever you want. There isn't a right and wrong, you just have to understand what each choice means for you. What I mean is this: if you decide, hey, I just want to go out, I want to have a good time, I don't want to worry, I want to eat as much as I possibly can, and I don't care if I gain a few pounds, that's fine. There isn't necessarily anything wrong with that, but then you can't get mad when you end up a few pounds up in the scale and you have to work that much harder to get back to where you were. You made that choice ahead of time, so be okay with it. Similarly, you really need to check yourself if you're being super diligent all week long and then completely blowing it every single weekend and then frustrated by your lack of progress. Like, I'm sorry, but if you're measuring your ketchup down to the exact gram because you're worried about going 5 calories over, but then wolfing down several thousand calories over your maintenance calories because you've been good all week, doesn't exactly make sense. And this is a big sign that your relationship with food needs some serious work. Anyway, on the flip side, if you want to be 100% compliant and really be on top of things, there's nothing wrong with that either, but then you can't be upset when you can't be more flexible with things and enjoy certain situations. Again, you're making that choice. Now that being said, I do feel like there's a better option than these two for most people, and I'm a much bigger fan of a refeed approach instead. This is where you have a day or two of higher calories, typically somewhere around your maintenance calories, where you get to enjoy some extra food. You still track, so you know you're still keeping yourself at a deficit for the week. And this way you can even save up some calories during the week to give yourself on the weekend or whatever you want to make some bigger fluctuations, but still average out the week the same. But this way, you still know how much you're getting, so you know if things are working or not and what kind of adjustments you need to make. Again, I'm not saying there isn't a time to enjoy an untracked meal, there certainly is, but if you're doing it frequently and not seeing results, you may have to ask yourself what exactly is more important to you, these meals or your results. Sometimes it can be really helpful to remember that your cutting phase is temporary and your time for more food during the reverse diet will come later, and especially if you do this thing right, you're gonna spend much more of your life not dieting than you will dieting. The other thing about refeeds is there's emerging research like this study out of USF that showed when one group had consecutive refeed days, they were able to keep more lean body mass and see less reductions in hormones and metabolism when equating calories for the week. So not only is there the psychological benefit of being able to enjoy more food, there can also be the physiological benefit, at least when doing consecutive day refeeds. The single day refeed will certainly help restore some glycogen stores and have that mental benefit, but it appears you need the consecutive day refeeds to get the hormonal and metabolic benefit. Now, with all this said, there are a few other things you need to consider whether doing refeeds or untracked meals. It's very possible you can see a spike on the scale after one of these, especially if you've been very low carb. This is when your body has been depleted of glycogen stores, and this will help fill them back up. And for every gram of glycogen you store, you also store almost 3 grams of water with it. So you always have to remember that scale weight and body fat are not always one of the same. And a lot, if not all of this weight, will be water weight. But that said, if you find that you just really struggle mentally seeing that scale go up after these meals, then you may want to stay off the scale for a couple days until things return more back to normal. I also think it's dangerous to try to make up for these days by either significantly slashing your calories or increasing your cardio more, as it's a slippery slope to get caught up in this game and it can send you down a bad path. So for most people, I think it's best, even if things get completely out of hand, don't beat yourself up about it. Beating yourself up will do way more harm than any amount of overeating in one day could possibly do. And second, understand you can't do anything to screw this up. You can't get lean from one day of good eating, and you can't get fat from one day of overeating. The only way this happens is if you give up completely. So when you do make a mistake, which you will because you're human, just get back on track. The all or nothing mentality is an absolute killer for so many people, and understand that you're better off being 80% on most of the time than you are being 100% on less than half the time. You're always just one meal from being back on track. Now here's the thing, if you're someone who's always struggled to lose weight and keep it off, especially if you're someone who struggles with a healthy relationship with food, make sure you check out this top video and I'll show you how to lose weight for good and stop being controlled by food. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you in that other video.